Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to be writing a program to calculate the sum from 1 to n prime numbers. And in this case, we can take, for example, 100. So we are going to be counting the sum of the prime numbers from 1 to 100. First, we need an integer, and we call it sum to keep the sum of the numbers. And then the next, we need an integer, call it prime count, and initialize it to 0. This is to keep to have a count of the prime numbers we have. And the third will be a boolean. We call it flag, which will be initialized to true. This is a boolean to check if the number is a prime number or not. So by default, we are setting it to true. And next, we need an integer called number, and we'll set it to 100, which is the number which we want to end at. So the next, we are going to have an array list. Basically, what I need an array list for is to keep track of the numbers. This is not necessary, but for me, I would just like to keep track of the numbers, and I'm using an array list since it is easier to deal with, and also you can add, the size is flexible, so you can add the numbers to it as you want, as you go. So we are going to use an array list, which is going to take in integers, and we are going to call it prime num. That's short for prime numbers. And okay, so new array list. Okay, so next we are going to begin the logic. So we are going to say for integer I equals to 0 and I less than number I plus plus. For I is equals to 0 and I less than number. In this case, our number is 100. So long as I is less than 100, then I should be incremented. So while it is being incremented, in it we want to set our flag equals to true, which means we are saying that each of this number is a prime number. Then we are going to have a second loop. We're going to have a second loop for j equals to 2 and j less than I, j plus plus. So here we are going to check if I modulus j equals to 0, then we want to set the flag equals to false. Okay, so to explain this, I did an error here. I is supposed to be 2. Okay, so to explain this, we are saying in this for loop, we are checking, we begin I by 2. So we are starting with 2 because we know every number is divided by 1, can divide itself by 1, and every number can divide also by 0. So we need to start with 2, if not we will get errors. So we are saying I is equal to 2, and while I is still less than the number, in this case 100, then I should be incremented. So in each of the I, we are going to run a second loop, which is j. So j will begin with 2, and as long as j is less than I, then j will be incremented. And while so in the j loop, I will be divided by j. And if I is divided by j and there is no remainder, it means, so right after this loop, we want to check if flag, which means if I is a prime number, which means if I stays true, then we want to add the number in the array of prime numbers. So we say prime nums dot add I. And also we want to increment the sum. So we say sum plus equal to I. And then we say prime count. After adding the prime numbers to the array of prime numbers and also adding the sum and counting the number. So that is it. And let me zoom out so you can see the code clearly. We had an integer to keep the sum, and we also had an integer to count the number of prime numbers, while we had the boolean set to true. This is to let us know if the number is a prime number or not. And also we have an integer number, that is the number which we want to end while looking for the prime numbers. And also here we have an array list, which is to store the prime numbers as we get them. And then we have our loop here, which does all the logic for us. So we say we begin from 2, so I is equals to 2. So as long as I is less than number, then we increment I. Then we are setting the flag to true. So we now have a second loop, which is j. So j we check, so long as j is less than I, j will be incremented and I will be divided by j. So while j is equals, if j is equals to 0, then the flag will be set to false, which means the number is not a prime number since it can be divided by another number. Then here we check if the flag is still true, because here if j is equals to 0, then the flag will be set to false, which means it's not a prime number. But if it isn't, then it is going to go out of this loop, then it is going to come here. So if the flag is true, so if flag means if the flag is true, then the prime, we are going to add the number to our collection of prime numbers, and we are going to increment the sum, and also we are going to count the number of prime numbers. So let's print the output. So here I'll say south. So to print the output, we first of all say the prime numbers from 1 to the number, which in this case is 100. We print it out, and we also print the sum, and we print the count. So let's see the output. Okay, there it is. Here's our output. So you see the prime numbers from 1 to 100 is, you see, and these are all the prime numbers from which are from 1 to 100. These are all the prime numbers, and the sum of all the prime numbers from 1 to 100 is 1060. And also the number of prime numbers from 1 to 100 is 25. So we have 25 prime numbers left in which are below 100.